In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the exact system that books 3 to 5 highly qualified sales calls every single day for online fitness coaches. And this is the exact system that I've used with every single one of my clients in the last 2 years. I've worked with over 150 fitness coaches in all different niches around the world and have clients doing between $10,000 and $100,000 a month. And I'm making this video so that you guys can understand this system, you can see how it works, and how you can go implement it into your online fitness coaching business right now in your Instagram DMs. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Now, before we get into it, you've probably heard me talk about this implementation call. And I don't do this a lot, but every week I open up a few slots for people to hop on with me personally, not a closer or some salesperson. And I will directly diagnose what's going on in your setting process, in your DMs, in your business, in your content, and give you a game plan on exactly what you need to go fix to double or triple your revenue. I did this with Jack, who was at $1,000 to $4,000 a month as a hormone specialist coach, and directly after got to $10,000 a month off of our implementation call. As well as Avery, who was in a similar niche, was doing $1,000 to $3,000 a month and did $13,000 the next week off of our free implementation call. Again, it's completely free and the link is in the description if you want to book yours. So today we are going to be going through my SAS setting flow, or sales as a service. Outbound DMs is a huge part of almost every business's acquisition, especially in everything that I work on with you guys in terms of our daily KPIs, getting those outbounds out. I want to go really into depth with what the structure and flow of a good outbound setting process should look like. Everything from where you should be sourcing leads, the content you need to be posting to get those leads, the openers, tracking, booking the call, the frame of the call, objection handling, all that fun stuff, as well as also I mentioned briefly how you should be operating this sales system if you have a setter or if you are running this solo. The goal with this system essentially is that you get to, if you are a solo coach, you're in that 0 to 15,000, maybe 20K a month. You're getting to that 1 to 3 booked calls a day territory. And at scale past that with a team, you're getting to that 3 to 5 booked calls a day territory. With that being said, this is called sales as a service. The goal with this is that you kind of have this intention where you lead with service in your DM outbounds and you close later. I think a lot of times we've probably seen in the past with DM trainings you might have been through or free resources where it kind of feels more like 20 questions. And with these basic openers and everything, you're kind of just asking for time, attention, and money, and you're getting ghosted. No one's opening the openers, etc. But if you shift the frame, if you give first, by the time you ask for the call, the hope is that that lead has already experienced what it feels like to be coached by you, and that's really what we're after. So the 3 aims of this system are to do these 3 things. First is to increase the open rate of your outbound, okay? A lot of people will commonly come and tell me, hey, I'm doing 30 outbounds a day, 50 outbounds a day, 100 outbounds a day, whatever it is, and nothing's getting opened. So that's the first thing. How do we get these messages opened in a climate on Instagram where everybody and their mother is sending these outbound DMs and nobody feels like, responding to people? The next goal of this is to build trust faster, so booking cycles shrink from weeks to days. Typically what we see with, normal outbound strategies, outdated stuff is, it could take weeks to even months for somebody to go through that, what we call that buyer's journey, right? Between the time that they see you for the first time and when they actually decide, hey, I'm going to go ahead and hop on a call. And so what we want to do is we want to create a sales system that actually moves that buyer's cycle along quicker, so that the time between when someone again sees you for the first time for maybe a top of funnel reel, like a storytelling video, a transformation video, and by the time they actually buy, can be shortened down to, a week, even days. So, some people here didn't even follow me when we reached out to you, right? So with the right, service forward approach, this becomes a lot easier, okay? And the third goal of this is, again, to produce hot calls with high close rates, hard objection handling, aggressively closing people. You're going to start that, client relation off on not the best note. You know, when you really force someone through the door, you risk dispute. You risk them, you know, having this bad taste in their mouth, and whether they dispute and, you know, ask for the money back, or they just don't put in the best results, it might not be the best fulfillment experience. And so this system, again, aims to have these calls where you don't have to really do that. You can have an identity level conversation. People see the value, and it's just a, you know, smooth transition into fulfillment. So the goal here, right, and the core principle again is that people don't pay you guys for meal plans and Zoom calls. They pay for outcomes, right? And specifically for you solving their problems because they're bought into you. And so again, when we kind of think as sales as a service, especially in the DMs, and we're going to talk all about this in a second and how this actually looks, we get to show people your problem solving capabilities and who you are as a coach before they step into fulfillment. They get bought into that because right now, let's just be honest, nobody else on Instagram, a lot of fitness coaches aren't taking the time to do stuff like this. They'd rather just spam 20 quick questions and have a really spammy outbound approach. But when you take the extra step to, again, see this as a service, you're going to go ahead and get some even like great remarks from people appreciating how you go about this. So why exactly does this beat the old way? Well, the old way, maybe old scripts that you guys have seen or old tutorials, whatever, where, you know, maybe your old opener kind of just like, hey, where are you from? How old are you? What do you struggle with? Right? You know, there's no reason for people to answer these questions. It smells like a pitch, essentially. You know, they put their guard up before you say a word because you're reaching out to somebody in the middle of the day and just start spamming them with random questions. They can tell that you're going to try and sell them on something. And so they're going to put their guard up. You're not going to be able to get as many responses, and you're not going to be able to move as many people closer to that booked call. But when you approach from, you know, kind of this direction, like, hey, where do you feel the smallest right now? I've got specific protocols for each, and I can send you one that matches for free, right? When you can kind of give custom value in these presets before they ask, they will volunteer the diagnostic. They will volunteer the answers to the questions because the resource or the value or whatever you're giving to them in the DMs depends on it. And that's how you can move closer to a call. So there are 3 things that your guys' audience will most likely struggle with to some degree, okay? That's going to be doubt, uncertainty, and accountability. One of those 3 things, okay? Every single fitness offers, you know, and again, yes, there's going to be more tactical struggles that are more niche specific. However, these 3 things are going to be the biggest issues, and we're trying to solve that in the DMs before we even get on a call, right? SAS solves all 3 inside the DMs. You kind of destroy these limiting beliefs with proof. You debunk uncertainty with custom insight. You create accountability with aggressive follow-ups. By the time you ask for a call, they're already trained on what coaching with you feels like. All right. So before we again dive into like the actual scripting, the openers and stuff like that, I want to talk through setup and tools. Okay. Everything that you kind of need to run a great DM setup. So first thing I recommend, and this is something that I'm going to release like separate training on, every setter, or if you're a solo coach, you should be filling out some sort of daily end of day form. This is something that we can set up, you know, automations to where it auto populates a, you know, Excel sheet, but you should be at the end of every day, either yourself as a solo coach, if you're doing the setting, or if you have a setter, somebody needs to be filling out an end of day report. And we'll talk through exactly what metrics that need to be tracked in just a moment. But, you know, stereotypically, right, like the total outbound messages, the total follow-up sent, the total responses. These things need to be tracked at the end of every day. And you can do this with, again, just a simple Google form. The second thing is you're going to want to have some sort of Google Sheet to track all of this over time. The beautiful thing about if you do this all in Google is that you can go ahead and connect, as you see here, you can connect a Google Sheet to the form. In Google Forms, after you create, let's say your, you know, EOD form, and this is something that I'm going to be doing for you guys. I'm going to, you know, kind of build these systems out and give them to you. Once you fill out your EOD, or your setter does, it will automatically fill all of that information into a sheet. The goal, obviously, of the sheet is to see these metrics over time, to track weekly metrics, to track averages, to, you know, look at booking rate, all that fun stuff. Next tool, 2 random tools I want to talk about. So obviously Google Form and Sheets is free, so you don't really have to pay anything there. But If you have a setter or you want to do this yourself, you want this for the sake of the oversight, ManyChat obviously is something that most of you probably already use for free resources and stuff like that. ManyChat is great for setter management. It's great because one, you can have your setter, they don't even have to log into your Instagram account. They can simply be logged into ManyChat and they can virtually send out messages through the inbox there. Access your Instagram DMs straight from ManyChat. But two, this is where I really like ManyChat. Something me and my setter even have been doing recently is when it comes to EOD reports, obviously that can be a little monotonous to, track all that stuff, right? To figure out exactly like what you're doing. And, if you're trying to, especially if you're a solo coach, you're trying to get out as many DMs as you can a day while juggling everything else. What's really cool about ManyChat is, for example, you can take the opener that you were using that day, right? You paste it into the search bar. And so all of those messages of that opener will come up. And then you filtrate just that day. And then you can count how many openers or like outbound conversations you started. And it'll easily tell you, okay, boom, you did 43 outbounds. You did 53 new conversations. You can then also take the opener that you're using for follow-ups, like, hey man, just bumping this up with an emoji. You paste that in. If that's what you've been sending that day, filtrate it to that day. Boom. Now you know how many follow-ups you did. So you can quickly get your EOD reports done really quickly with ManyChat, and that starts at $25 a month. The second thing is a little bit more advanced. This is again for those of you who are in that $20,000 a month territory. You're starting to try and grow a little more. You're managing a team. You have a setter. This is where you basically take the tool Zapier and you can have it shoot over to like a Slack channel or something, kind of like a EOD report update, kind of like this. So this is something I do in my own Slack channel with my team. At the end of every day, once my setter fills out his EOD report, then auto-populates not only the sheet, but it auto-populates into Slack, a little bit. Okay, so we got the date, their name, total outbounds, total follow-ups, the engagement, how many calls booked, wins of the day, losses of the day, notes for me, or if you are running closers, the sales team. Okay. Now, again, today I'm not going to go too much into depth on like how do I specifically set up all that tech and stuff like that, since the goal of today's conversation is more so to teach you guys the actual setting framework, to book these calls and close clients off of this DM setting strategy. But this is just a general overview of some tools that you may want to be using, that we will be using, and I'll be installing into all of your guys' businesses with you over the course of these next couple one-on-ones that we each have individually. So with that being said, the first thing we need with this whole setting process, okay? We can't set people if we don't know where to actually source the leads from, right? Like we actually have to get these people from different places on our page. So where do we actually source leads from? Well, we want to generally source from the warmest areas first and kind of work our way down, because different places in our audience are going to yield better conversations. For example, people who claim free resources, these are people who already are saying, I have an issue. They're raising their hand. They have intent. Right? These are going to be the warmest of the warmest leads, slightly below, again, somebody who's directly shooting you a keyword. Again, this training is for outbound DMs. This is not covering inbound today. This is going over your daily outbound engine to book 1 to 3 calls. So obviously, yes, what's warmer than probably all of this is someone directly answering a CTA saying that they want to work with you or filling out an application. But this is for the sake of outbound DMs. So free resource claimers, they're going to be the warmest of the warmest DM conversations. Slightly below that is going to be story engagers. Okay. People who are voting on, polls, people who are, using Q&A boxes, people who are even just liking stuff, swiping up, whatever. People who have shifted from just real engagers to story engagers are pretty warm. Right in the middle, which is just going to probably be like the most volume of what you do, because these are really warm, but you won't have tons compared to down here, obviously. Post and real engagers. Okay. This is a like or a comment, literally just any engagement on reels, as well as carousels and posts. Okay. That's going to be kind of like a 5 out of 10, and then lastly, you have new followers. The reason why new followers is lower on the list, it's lower priority, is because that person literally just discovered you for the first time, most likely. They just saw you. And now if you pounce at them, right, it's going to be hard. I see a lot of people with like the old way of setting, try and, set somebody to book a call immediately with this super hard, aggressive, setting process off of new followers, and you're burning a lot of leads because you never got to let them experience you through content and stuff like that. However, I will say with this specific setting strategy that I'm teaching you today, it actually does allow you to still DM new followers. In the past, I've typically been against DMing new followers because of that exact situation where they haven't been able to watch your content. But if you DM people in the way that I'm going to show you today with like this kind of service forward, you will still be able to get on booked calls with people who even don't follow you yet, which I know that sounds crazy, but we're going to dive into all of this now. So let's talk about openers. Okay. Openers is by far the most important part of this equation. Getting people to actually open the message is most people's big issue. So the first thing I want to say, okay, there's 3 specific rules that you need for an opener. Okay. 1, use their name, reference engagement, and make it feel like a human typed it. So make it personalized. Okay. Using their name specifically is something that can change if the data shows that it's not working. But 9 times out of 10 for most people, using the person's name and actually referencing where they came from, making it feel like a human typed it, it's going to be huge, right? Second, diagnostic. So we want to kind of, instead of just saying like, hey man, thanks for the engagement, are you on a fitness journey right now? Some like super vague open question. We want to kind of frame the question around their pain with multiple choices so that we can give them something in return for engaging with us in the DMs, right? The old way of sending outbound DMs basically was just, hey man, are you on a journey? And then just asking 20 questions. This new way you'll see kind of revolves around asking if they are struggling with specific stuff that is in your niche, and then offering a free resource, free value, etc. And that's the third thing, right? Custom value, a specific resource, a voice note, whatever, different protocol for each diagnostic answer. Okay. So I'm going to show you kind of 5 different niches, okay, right here, which I kind of picked niches of people who I'm working with right now. So you might see something of yourself here, but I'll kind of dive into it. So let's say you're on a mobility and like pain offer, right? It might be something like, hey, Tom, you've been popping up in my notifications a lot lately, and I appreciate the engagement. Quick question. Where's your body feeling the worst right now? Knees, hips, lower back, shoulders. I've got specific mobility protocols for each, and I'll send you one that matches for free. Or sales confidence. Hey, Jack, you've been popping up in my notifications a lot. I appreciate the engagement, right? Similar thing, but kind of just more now jumps towards where's confidence taking the biggest hit in sales right now? Voice presence, energy on Zoom, or closing under pressure. I've got specific gym-based protocols for each, and I'll send you one that matches for free. Let's look at lifestyle bodybuilding. Hey, David, you've been popping up in my notifications a lot lately. I appreciate the engagement. Quick question. Are you starting to take it more seriously? Have you plateaued natural have you plateaued naturally? Let's just say naturally. Or are you considering your first cycle, or are you already on? I've got specific protocols for each stage, and I'll send you one that matches for free. Asian men. Hey, Peter, you've been popping up in my notifications a lot lately. I appreciate the engagement. Quick question. Where do you feel the smallest right now? Shoulders and delts, chest, arms, or overall frame? I've got specific size body building protocols for each, and I'll send you one that matches. And the same thing maybe for, like golf performance. Hey, Chad, you've been popping up in my notifications a lot lately. I appreciate the engagement. Quick question. Where's your game, leaking the most strokes right now, or, struggling the most? Driving distance, late round stamina, mobility, rotation, or mental game under pressure? I've got specific gym-based protocols for each, and I'll, send you one that matches for free. You guys see how these are way different than just some vague, like, hey, I appreciate you liking my post. How's your journey going right now in the gym? Or like, how's your fitness journey been? Does this make sense how we're starting this off, and we're going to get more people to answer these openers because we're promising something in return, right? We're starting the conversation from a perspective of service. We're going to give this person something if they engage with us. We're going to help them solve an issue completely for free. And that is what's going to get the opening rate up. And you're going to have these people in DM conversation with you feeling like, wow, this person took time to reach out to me. Now, the best part is look, if you're a solo coach under $20,000 a month, obviously you're doing all of this yourself, right? So the text openers and everything. But you'll realize this text opener can be sent by a setter, right? And then anything where, specific voice memos or whatnot is required, that's where you can kind of jump in yourself. But this is very scalable. The DM system still works with, an employee. All right. Now let's talk about open rate though, and testing specifically. Okay. Every single part of the DMs can be tested, iterated, perfected. And that's the thing. Over time with each of you, the goal is to build a structure in a Google Doc or something of a DM setting flow that you're just like uber confident in, that's been working for yourself, that's proven, like literally down to every character, every comma, that you know works with you and your audience because it's been tested, it's been iterated, it's been proven through the booking process. It's got you to that 1 to 3 booked calls a day. And you take that, you bring it into an SOP, and eventually you train a setter on that. And maybe you have to change things then to get to that 3 to 5 a day. But nonetheless, let's talk about when to change things with your opener. Okay. If you fall below a 10% open rate, so like a 10% open rate, less than 10% of people are opening and responding to your messages, then you're going to change your opener. Okay. This is such a sales forward opener, so it should get a high open and reply rate. So the rule here is you're going to run a new opener for 3 to 4 days at 50 to 100 DMs a day. You have to do volume with this. If you're not doing enough volume, then you truly will never know if the data is accurate. If reply rate stays below 10%, change one variable, but not everything at once. When I say change one variable, I mean change if you say their name or not. Change the pain points you're talking about. Change the structure and the grammar, but do not change the entire message, right? It's like similar to science experiments. You can't change multiple variables at once and actually figure out, what affected growth. There's too much going on. Okay. So let's talk about RVQ, how to actually talk in the DMs. So now we talked about openers, right? So now that we got the person to open, how do we like respond and, now move forward towards that value, towards that booked call, etc.? Well, the first principle when it comes to any response, let's say the person says, oh, like I've been struggling with, my hips, or I've been struggling with my swing or whatever from one of those openers. Now, how do we actually respond? The wrong way to respond is just to ask another question or to just send the free resource or something like that. A lot of times I review DM conversations I see some of you guys having, and you'll shoot an opener and ask a question, they'll respond and they'll say a bunch of stuff, and you'll completely ignore everything they said and just ask the next question. That's like being on a date and, you're asking somebody questions, they talk about themselves, and you just don't even take time to, recognize anything that they just said, and just boom, next question, right? So we want to follow this framework RVQ, okay? R is relate. Let's say it's like my hips. Tell them it's common. You see it with clients. You get it. Like you understand. You resonate and relate with them a little bit. Okay. Take a time to actually note on what that person's saying, especially if you guys are more on like an identity and like, personable offer. If someone tells you their story, take a second to say something about it. Like, do not just move to the next question. If someone opens up to you in the DMs and you just move on to the next question, they're going to feel stupid. They're going to feel like, wow, I just shared a ton of stuff to this random person on the internet, and they just moved right to the next question. I feel like they just, maybe want something like my money, right? Next is value. Okay. Drop insight. What causes that issue? What causes that specifically with, let's say, their hips, bad swing, whatever. This is like, again, like the reason why we use this, like even this, like these multiple valuable insights, even in the responses before we get to the free resource, is because you get to actively show people who you are as a coach. Your ability to like diagnose and solve problems, your ability to explain things and take time to be personable. When you do this, you are pre-selling people on your coaching ability. Does it make sense? This is the whole idea of like sales as a service. When you take literally just a few extra minutes in each DM conversation to put more effort into these responses, you are going to get on more calls. You're going to close at a higher rate. You're going to be able to charge more. It's just ultimately better than trying to spam the quick responses. Okay. An old way of doing this, again, like I said, is yes, you maybe spend less time in the DMs. You just spam out a basic script and you have a setter do it, but you get on either little calls because nobody in your audience like respects you enough throughout that, or you get on lots of calls but you have such a low close rate. Do you spend a little bit extra time in DMs? Yes, but you spend less time on sales calls because you have higher close rate. You get on less calls with more qualified people, which is what you want, and you save yourself in fulfillment when you're working with dream clients. The last part of this is Q. Question. Ask for more info. Obviously, you need to do that. Always frame it as needing help to help them better. The goal here, right, is now that you said that you're going to help them with something specific in the outbound process, right? Like you said, are you struggling with one of these 3 things? I can, kind of help you with something for free. When you ask more questions, even about their job, even like pre-qual questions, you can all frame it in a way of like, I'm asking you these things to help you, not I'm asking you these things because I need to make sure you can afford my services. Okay. So Tom answers hips. Okay. This is where you can come in with a voice note. Bro, hips are honestly the most common spot I see with my clients, especially if you sit a lot or train heavy. Most people think it's a flexibility issue, but 9 times out of 10, it's actually weak glutes and a tight hip flexor because, they're kind of like fighting each other. And, quick question, by the way, so I can send you the right thing. When did this hip stuff start and what makes it worse and how is it affecting your day to day? You see how that's so much more personable and like service based than just going straight to like, he says all this stuff like, oh, it's my hips. Okay, got you. Here's my hip protocol. Or like, okay, got you. Like, let's get on a call and I can help you with this. Or I could talk about coaching. This is much more service forward. All right. Now let's talk about daily KPIs. Okay. Numbers you have to hit, things you have to track. Okay. You're going to minimum, maximum. Okay. 50 to 100 outbound openers a day. Okay. That's the prime number there. No more than 100. Okay, no less than 50. If you do over 100, Instagram will flag your activity. If you do under 50, you're not doing enough volume. Follow-ups, 100 a day. So just following up, bumping up conversations. Open rate, 10 to 20%. That's like open and reply rate can use similar. That's the floor. The goal as a solo coach, you want to get to 1 to 3 booked calls a day. That is the goal. You want to get to 1 to 3 booked calls a day off of outbound. And at scale, if you're working with a setter and you have a team, you want to get to 3 to 5 plus. Okay. Again, like I said, do not go over 100 openers or 100 follow-ups per day. You do not want to Instagram to flag your account. If this happens, you are at risk of that little message, where like either one, people get like a little preview before you message them, like this person, like suspicious activity, or two, you might get like your Instagram DMs like banned for a period of time. Okay. Don't go over those amounts. I would say, to be clear, like you don't have to be like scared, like, oh, like if I get to like 100 or I accidentally do 100 and something, I'll get my account banned. It's not that sensitive, but if you repeatedly do like 400 openers a day or something like that, you will get your account flagged. Okay. Another thing, we'll talk about this more in other training, but obviously when the system clicks, when you're doing this the right way, you'll be able to track your data over time. The reason that we have KPI and minimums is so that we can make better decisions. I will say time over time again, the clients who I've worked with who are obsessive about their minimums, who are obsessive about KPIs, and every day religiously make sure that those minimums get hit and beyond, are the people who have seen week over week growth, the people who treat outbound and this whole system kind of just like the last thing on the bucket list. Their growth is also reflective of that. Okay. A lot of you guys, I said this in a reel recently, a lot of coaches obsess over content because it's fun to obsess over content. It's this idea that you can make reels and, people just throw their credit cards at you. While it's true that great marketing can, like make your business blow up, at the end of the day, if you're not converting the attention that's coming to your page, then you're cooked, right? I think for most of you, what you have to understand is like, look, content alone will build trust and this, the willingness that someone is to buy from you, maybe to like 60 to 70% most of the time. When you're doing outbound, you kind of get to complete that extra 30 to 40%, if that makes sense. You step in and you move them along the rest of that buyer's journey manually, really quick. That's the whole point of outbound. Okay. So let's go over follow-ups. Okay. So this is another 50% of the game. Okay. Follow-ups are super, super, super important. So after you send that free resource, okay, if let's say the free resource you send is like a PDF link or something like that, it's like a quick consume, it's just kind of an overview of like your unique mechanism or something like that, you can follow up literally within like 3 to 4 hours to make sure that person read that. And again, if it's more like tactical or it's like a voice note or something like that, maybe like the day later. The goal here though is like we want to follow up and we want to like kind of come from the perspective of like, hey, I don't want this to just sit in your mental file cabinet, because we're showing people what true accountability looks like in the DMs. When we can hold people accountable for free, they imagine what it's like to be held accountable with us when, they're working with you more, because for the first time in their life, they're being held accountable to something, right? When someone calls you out in the DMs and says, why didn't you go through that? Why did you, I sent you this, like you still haven't implemented that. I thought you were struggling with this, right? When someone gets called out and held accountable for free in the DMs, they're going to respect you a lot more. You're holding them accountable because you care about these people getting the results. Like, let's not forget why we are running fitness coaching businesses. We're here to change lives. We're here to get people great results, right? And so when you can, for free, get people micro results in the DMs, you're going to get more people to pay you and pay you big for the real result. Okay, let's move on to the call frame. So here's the call frame here. Okay, and I recognize like you guys might feel like, hey, like there's like, certain mental parts that are missing. Don't worry, we're gonna go through like an actual like script in a second. Again, just want to get you guys kind of familiar with the overview. Okay, the call frame is very simple. Okay, you're framing calls as free game plans, free protocols, whatnot, not as a sales call for outbound. For inbound, you can frame it more as like you're okay, like an authority. Yes, it's about like we're going to see if we're a good fit to work together. I only have a few slots. Like, if we're a good fit, we can get started. Yeah, you can have more of that like authoritative vibe with that. But for outbound, you're going to them. So you have to frame it this way and it'll allow you to get on more calls. So this is where you kind of, say like, all right, let's set up a time to chat over the phone, like today or tomorrow. I can give you a free game plan to fix, XYZ. And if you want my help implementing it, we can chat about working together. If not, worst case, you execute on the plan alone, right? It's something as simple as putting together a free mobility protocol, free, like I remember a lot of people I was working with doing like peptide protocols. I know someone I spoke with recently, he was doing like, I told him he was like PEDs and bodybuilding. He was doing protocols in that regard. You can do, I was talking with Taylor, he's not here. He works with entrepreneurs. I was saying for your game plan or protocol, sales call from outbound, you should do it around like, pick apart their schedule and tell them how they should run their schedule for the week, right? You come up with something that makes sense for that niche for that person, okay? You basically say, we'll put together a free game plan. And through that game plan on that sales call, again, like you're selling them still on your coaching and you can still very much close from that. And, in fact, it's like a lot of you guys like who are here, like that was pretty much a direct correlation of why you're even, on this call right now, saying, yeah, like, listen, we can hop on a call together and I will essentially for 30-45 minutes service you for free. That is how you get clients, like predictably. I mean, like you like, it's really not about the money. You're not trying to just like, pool in as much money as quickly as possible with this sales process. But it's funny because that actually happens more than when you care only about like, signing. If you go out there every single day and you try and get people micro results and get people on calls and give free advice and, pre-sell yourself on coaching, you're going to get on 1 to 3 calls a day of people, being sold on how you do things, and they're going to want your help implementing it. That is the best way to run this. This is really where the magic is, right? It's like, hey, worst case scenario, you get this value and you go, do it alone, right? It removes any reason why someone would say no to a call. And then obviously when you're on the call, like, the more time you spend with people, the more likely they are to actually close from it. So another thing I want to go over, pre-call nurture, that's another sequence, okay? There's 5 touch points between when someone books and when you should hit them in the DMs, okay? 48 hours plus out, so like 2-3 days out, really just like any questions. 24 hours out is the Zoom link and the call details. The day of is any kind of, there's 2 things. One, you can send them like a relevant post to their situation. So you can send them like a reel and say like, hey, this like reminded me of what you're dealing with. Take a watch. Or if you have a pre-call via cell, this is where you would send that. An hour out, some testimonials as well as a check-in. And then 5 minutes out, kind of do a voice note or something like that. Chat soon. Okay. That is the pre-call nurture sequence. And again, I know you guys we're right now, this is just a presentation. Don't worry. We're going to still go over like a very in-depth SOP protocol on this. Okay. Now let's talk about objection handling. Okay. So there's a couple, situations you might get with this. Okay. One is people, if you're trying to like offer this free help in the DMs through outbound and people are kind of just like, just send the resource, or they're not willing to answer questions. Another is if people right off the bat jump to like, oh, I can't afford coaching, so I shouldn't get on a call. People saying I tried this or tried that before, it didn't work, had a bad experience, or if they just ghost mid conversation. Okay. One, if they're like, just send the resource, it's very simple, reframe. I hear you, man, but I genuinely can't send you something that won't help. Different protocols depend on the area, right? So just tell me where it's worse or like what pain. Again, this is specific to, your niche. And it takes 2 seconds. If they still won't engage after this, they're not a serious lead. You can move on. But from this, they should usually back down and say, okay, like this is what's been hurting, or this is what's been not working, blah, blah, blah. I can't afford it. Look, if they have some income, but it's tight, you can kind of talk about like, hey man, again, financing programs, like we offer different ways to work with clients if they objected on price. But if they're like, yo, I'm like dead broke, I can't afford anything, blah, 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 then kind of just send them off with a game plan. Leave a great impression. The big thing here is if you leave them with a game plan, then they'll come back around maybe in the future when they do have the finances. Another, I tried coaching before, didn't work. This is, again, RVQ, right? Relate, I hear that all the time. I've had other clients tell me that before. Validate why it didn't work. Give insight. Show how you are, a smart coach, right? Most coaches, do this wrong. They do this wrong with this specific person, right? Here, I'm just saying kind of vaguely, like, okay, like most coaches give a meal plan and ghost, but for you guys, like, you want to like mold that towards your niche and mold what coaches typically get wrong about that situation. And then, kind of dig into what specifically failed and use it as ammo. That's literally what your differentiation is. And if they ghost mid conversation, just run the follow up cadence. So after 4 attempts spread over, like, I would say a week with no response, then, I would just kind of just say something like, hey man, this is just the last message from me. Life happens. If you're ready to fix XYZ, my DMs are always open. No hard feelings. If someone's not answering after like, a bunch of follow ups like that after a week, you don't have to keep following up with them. Don't just keep spamming them. Okay. Lastly, and we're going to go over this now after this, we're getting towards the end of this presentation, your script doc. Okay. So this is one document where every message you send is all, kind of on here. So for example, this example is for like the Asian men frame. This got cut off a little bit at the top, but this is where we start to kind of see this all magic come together, right? This is where your setting structure lives. And now in a moment, we're going to go through a doc like this and you guys will start to see like, oh, okay, like I see where everything would be sent. But, we can kind of see everything from opener, like, hey, name, you've been popping up in my notifications a lot. I appreciate the engagement. Quick question. Where do you feel the smallest right now? Shoulders, delts, chest, arms, or overall frame? I've got, specific protocols. Message 2, right? Now you can see here we have some like instructions for you or a setter. Once they respond with a body part, use RVQ and send a voice note when possible. Guys, voice notes are going to always convert better than text. If you can send voice notes, send voice notes, okay? If shoulders and delts, if chest, if arms, if overall frame. You see how there's like a different way we answer each one? So if it's shoulders and delts, bro, delts are the number one spot I see Asian guys feel small. And most of us have narrow clavicles. So without serious side delt volume, we look like boxy, whatever. Quick question so I can send the right thing. Same thing with like chest, arms, frame, and then it goes towards how long have you been training? What does your current split look like? And how much would you say you've grown in the last 6 months? And then once they answer, again, RVQ, right? Got it. That tracks with what I see all the time, honestly. Most guys plateau because their volume's too low for their frame size and their nutrition isn't dialed to their actual maintenance. Quick one before I send the protocol. What do you do for work? Asking because, if you're sitting at a desk all day versus on your feet, the recovery and meal timing pieces change a little bit. Do you see how, like, when we're asking questions here, everything kind of coincides with the value you're about to give them? It doesn't just sound like you're asking questions for the fun of it. Like right here, we're asking what they do for work because a part of that free resource or like the advice he's about to give changes, right? Maybe if it was more of like, if this was a pain and mobility offer, you're asking what they do for work because if they're on their feet all day, then, you get in the way of stuff, right? When you run this framework this way, every time you answer questions, they're more likely to ask because they want the free help, they want the free resource, and you get to pre-qualify them in the process. When they say what they do for work, that's, obviously indirectly pre-qualifying them depending on what they do for work. Then from here, okay, boom, they answer, you send the message, so you attach the protocol, matching their answer, you give that to them. And then, after, maybe you follow up with them. I don't know why this like cut off here, but we're going to go over this more in depth. But, after that, you follow up with them. Hey, man, did you get to use that? They say, oh, like, yes, I did. Worked magic. Awesome. So then you kind of can transition. So, okay, cool. Hey, let's set up a time to chat over the phone today or tomorrow. I can give you a free game plan to fix, more stuff essentially. And if you want my help implementing it, we can chat about working together. If not, worst case, you execute on the plan alone. You down? Once they say yes, you send the Calendly link, and you can kind of just say pick the soonest slot that works and shoot me a screenshot when you've booked. Then you do your follow-up. Okay? That is the process. So now some final notes. Okay? So 3 things. 1, this is a game of over-providing. Give all the information and insight away and let the 20% of personalized accountability and like who you are as a coach and your way of doing things be what people pay for. Information is dead. Everything that you guys know, unfortunately, is out there for free. It is freely available. So give that information not only in content, but in the sales process. Give free resources. Put together a free resource on specific protocols. Put together a free resource on your unique mechanism, the old way versus the better way of doing things for your ICP. Put together game plans on call. Give 80% of the value of the information away for free. Educate them, provide that for free. and let the 20% of personalized accountability from you as a coach that they want in their corner be the reason why people pay, because that's ultimately what this is, right? Second, data tracking is non-negotiable, okay? If you guys are just spamming out DMs every day, you're not tracking anything, you are guessing, okay? Every week, you should be able to make variable changes and testing new things, different parts of your opener, replies, follow-ups, how you send that call booking link, pre-call nurture sequence. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know anything about your growth. You're literally just guessing. Okay. It's the same thing about tracking macros and all that stuff. And a lot of you guys talk all about in content how if you aren't tracking, you know nothing about your fitness and health. It's the same thing in business. Okay. In the end state, this is the goal that I want you guys to work towards. You guys want to get towards, if you are a solo coach between $0 a month and $15,000 to $20,000 a month, you want to get to 1 to 3 calls a day from this. Okay. If you have a team, it's 3 to 5 plus. Okay. Now let's go over the actual SOP from this. So number one, let's talk about daily operating rhythm. Okay. So how do you do this on a day to day? When you wake up, when do I do this? How do I structure my day? If it's me, if it's a setter, how do I run my day so that I can do this amount of work max? Because it sounds like a lot. So this is what the day actually looks like. Okay. There's, again, in here, there's a clean version for setters, and then there's a kind of real whatever one for solo coaches. Okay. Both work. Now I will say the solo version is a little bit messier, but it's what gets you to the revenue point where you can afford the cleaner setter version. Okay. The setter version is going to be more, cause that's their only job. That's all they have to worry about, setting DMs. But when you're a solo coach, you have to understand, I think a lot of people look for this perfect way, I can have AI automate the DMs and it'll save me so much time and blah. Now the truth is, dude, until you get to 15 to 20K a month, DMs are going to be a war zone. It's going to be messy. It's going to be like you sending voice notes at the grocery store and in the gym. It's going to be like that. Still to this day, even past that, even when you do have a setter, I'm going to be honest with you, there's going to be times when you still have to jump in the DMs, when you have to send a voice note, when you have to, handle something random. That's just business. If that's too much for you, then entrepreneurship might not be your cup of tea, because this is just raw reality of what this looks like. Okay. So here are the, 2 modes you're in. Okay. One is send mode. So this is one time in the day where you have a concentrated block, usually in the morning, where you push out the opener volume and follow-ups in one focus setting. And then respond mode. And this is basically just the rest of the day. You got IG open on your phone or a laptop, and you're just responding to stuff as fast as possible. You just make it one of those things. It's very similar to client work. Okay. When you give clients 24/7 access to you, the best way that I always tell people to handle that is do not just leave your clients hanging until later in the day. And you can pick spots, but it's just when you get a message from a client, just respond to it then. The quicker you respond to it, you don't let it pile up, right? It's what I even now at this point, I leave Slack up all day. So when I'm working on my computer, if I'm doing something, if one of you guys message me and I'm on my computer, I just, pause what I'm doing, answer, get back to what I'm doing. It takes 2 seconds. But if you're out and about, it's whenever you get to it, you send send a voice message back, whatever. It's the same thing here. Okay. You can do voice notes anywhere. That's the beauty of this stuff. Okay. When you're in line for coffee. Okay. Because here's the thing. Speed is the most important variable. How fast people get responded to. I hear all the time, I'll be on a call with a coach and they'll tell me typically, I'll try and get back within a few hours or maybe the next day. That's horrible. You need to understand that is not good. If you are responding to people multiple hours later, unless it's you were on a ton of calls and there's generally nothing you can do. But if you're taking days to respond to people, that is, you are literally letting people go dry, and the urgency that they once had to talk to you is now gone. Okay. You need to keep the lightning in the bottle and keep that conversation flowing. Okay. When it comes to respond mode, try to figure out ways with people, and maybe for some people, no, it doesn't really work. When you try and create an afternoon block, you send everything in the day and then you answer everybody at the end of the day, that just makes the conversations move so slow, because people answer to you all throughout the day, and then you answer them at night, and then they answer you the next day and you answer them that night, and then they answer you again. You take a conversation that could have happened in 20 minutes and you span it over the course of 5 days. That's stupid. Okay. So in the morning, when you wake up, okay, you pick your window whenever you want to do this. You open Instagram, you kind of pull your sources. You look at your story engagers. You look at, the free resource engagers. You look at the people who are, messaging you. You look at, people who are engaging with posts, and you kind of just bring those together. And then you kind of just bring your openers in, okay? Bring the opener to each person. You start sending those openers, because again, the opener isn't completely different. It's really just the name and stuff like that. You have one opener that you have crafted for your audience, and you just change the name. You send that opener. You send it to people down the line. And then you wait. right? You're going to wait for people to start responding and you start going through this whole process, right? RVQ, sending the resources, etc., etc., etc. Okay. This is all, you guys can read through this. This is pretty much just what I just summarized, though, just responding throughout the day. Okay. Only things that can interrupt respond mode are you sleeping, you're doing deep work blocks, you're on live calls, so sales calls, client coaching calls, or if you're in the gym. If you're in the gym, you're training, whatnot. But if you're on the go in between different things in your day, you should be able to respond to voice notes. You should be able to hit back. Okay. Again, you just have to remember as a solo coach, like it's going to be messy until you get to 15 to 20K a month. Once you get there, you can actually afford a setter. If you are making less than 20K a month, less than 15K a month, you cannot afford to pay a good setter, straight up. Okay. Yeah, that's that, right? If you're solo and you're running both fulfillment and setting, the reality is it's like, look, sometimes, yeah, you won't be able to get to it in 3 minutes. You'll be on a call, eating dinner, and that's fine. It's not broken. Like, this whole system doesn't just blow up if you respond in 2 hours instead of 5 minutes, but it is if you respond, like 2 days later, whatever. Okay. The goal, honestly, is, respond within at least an hour or two if you're a solo coach. But for a setter, that person should be responding literally within almost minutes. That is like the standard that setters are held to. That because fast response time when someone is, engaging, that is when you're getting back to stuff to keep that lightning in the bottle. Okay. You can see, yeah, setter standard is way, 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 way higher. Okay. Because their whole job is literally just, hey, and the thing is with setters that I'll say, I won't go too deep into this because this is not a setter training call, but setters can be held to a high standard because look, if you're paying them $3,000 to $5,000 a month to literally just reply to DMs, then it's not like they're sitting at a desk from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's not what it is. They can be out doing literally anything. They just have to make sure that they have their notifications on. And you might want to have them like at a desk or whatever, but like if they're walking their dog or they're out and about, like, and they have no other calls, they have no other work, they should be able to respond to somebody within a couple minutes that fast. Because again, if you're paying them solid wage just to get answer messages, 3 to 5K a month, that should be expected. Okay. Now, end of day, let's talk about the EOD and stuff like that. Okay. With the EOD, we're going to go over this individually with you guys, but these are the things you need to be tracking. Okay. Total outbound sent, total follow-up sent, outbound responses received, follow-up responses received, calls booked, wins of the day. So like 1 to 2 sentences for yourself and for me. This also can be just sent to me even within our individual chats. Losses of the day, notes for the sales team. So for me, it says anything Max needs to see. Yeah. So notes for me, notes for you, whatever. Okay. Also your Slack EOD will kind of auto populate stuff like that if you set up that, kind of automation. Okay. So this is going to be a whole case walkthrough. Okay. This is going to be the last thing we do before I open the floor to questions. We're going to walk through a full case by case, message to answer, message to answer, message to answer, all the way through a booked call. Okay. So opener. Hey Tom, you've been popping up in my notifications a lot lately. I appreciate the engagement. Quick question. Where's your body feeling the worst right now? Knees, hips, lower back, shoulders. I've got specific mobility protocols for each, and I'll send you the one that matches for free. Now, again, this is your standard opener. And again, the psychology here is, okay, Tom sees the message. 3 things happen in his head, right? 1, he recognizes that someone's reaching out personally. The diagnostic question is easy to answer. There's options for him to pick one, and the free resource is specific to him. So he wants that resource. So Tom will reply, okay, hips, honestly. I sit at a desk all day. Deadlifts make it worse, not better. LOL. Cool. He answered the diagnostic and gave you context. So now you respond. Bro, hips are honestly the most common spot I see with my clients, especially for guys who deadlift. Most people think it's a flexibility issue, but 9 times out of 10, it's actually weak glute medius and tight hip flexors, kind of fighting each other. Your deadlift is making it worse because you're loading a hip that's already in a compromised position. Quick question, so I can send the right thing. When did this hip stuff start? What makes it worse during the day? And is it more on one side or both, right? Do you see how we're running the whole RVQ sequence here of relate, provide value and insights, question? Now Tom answers. Started maybe 6 to 8 months ago. Gets worse late afternoons after sitting all day. Mostly on my right side. My right hip flexor feels like a guitar string. Makes total sense. Right side only hip flexors that feel like a guitar string at the end of the day. Means your body is compensating for a movement pattern you've been doing for the years. The fix isn't, stretching more. It's actually strengthening the opposite side glute and unloading that hip flexor through specific drills. By the way, what do you do for work? Asking because if you're at a desk versus on your feet versus driving, the protocol changes a little bit. He says he's a software engineer. He's fully remote, sits 8 to 10 hours a day, then trains 4 times a week. Okay. Now, obviously, look, like he's a software engineer. He can most likely afford this, right? So you're going to go ahead and give that free resource and you're going to hedge this towards a book call. All right, bro. I'm sending over the protocol that fixes your situation. It's the desk anchored powerlifting version, focuses on, this hip flexor, blah, blah. You tell him everything about it. First, do this for a little bit. Second, blah, blah, blah. So you send the free resource. Now, 2 days later, maybe he responds, or even you can kind of respond, right? This is where I want you guys, when you give a free resource, you should be like holding people accountable to actually going through it, right? Again, people deal with doubt, uncertainty, or an accountability issue. If you're holding them accountable to the free resources that you're giving, then people are going to get pre-sold on who you are as a coach. So let's say after some follow-ups and stuff like that, Tom responds, he did the protocol for the 2 days, the single leg glute bridges, helped him a lot. Hip feels better. Crazy. So now you can do this. Knew it would. Asymmetry is real. Now here's where it gets interesting. That protocol is kind of band-aid level work, but the actual long-term fix is rebuilding your movement pattern under load, which is what I do with my one-on-one guys. Okay. This is where you're kind of like mentioning how you work with people and how, look, like that free resource, what you always want to do when you send free resources, you're saying, look, like that solved a short-term issue, but we want to solve the long-term issue. But quick question. Do you have at least, another thing you can do, do you have at least $300 to $500 a month to invest into your training and recovery right now? Asking because I want to make sure if I lay out a full game plan, you can actually execute on it. The whole thing here is you can do the whole, like, do you have $300 to $500 a month thing for like the free game plan call, because you can, again, pre-qualify, do they have money? But you're not pre-qualifying it as like, do you have $300 to $500 a month to invest into me? You're pre-qualifying it as, hey, I would love to give you like a free game plan. Do you have $300 to $500 a month to invest into equipment, whatever it is, for like you to actually go do this? So you can kind of say, here, cool, full thing has too many moving parts to text out, but here's what I can do. Let's hop on a quick call today or tomorrow. I'll lay out a full game plan for fixing the hip permanently and rebuilding your movement under load. If you want my help implementing it, we can chat about that on the call. If not, worst case, you walk away with the plan and execute alone. You down? He says, yes, let's do it tomorrow. You send the Calendly link, and then from there, you go ahead and nurture on. Now that you've seen the exact system that books 3 to 5 highly qualified sales calls for your fitness coaching business every single day, I want you to take action on it. Go implement this into your business. And if you want to take it even further and you want to make sure this works, go check out the description. It's the top link. You can book in your implementation call, and I will plan out a game plan that's custom to you and your business on exactly what you need to fix to grow to that next level. With that being said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.